Good afternoon, everyone. In this ninth episode of Gaza On My Mind, Gaza على بالي, a number of people who will be joining, including the people you see on the screen, will be addressing Palestine or Palestinian displacement in Egypt with our first guest, Huda Asfour, as well as fundraising for Gaza generally with director of UNRWA-USA, Hani Almadhoun, who will be joining us shortly, who hails from Gaza. We will also be fundraising directly to UNRWA-USA.org, which is the URL that you will find later in big font on the screen. As Israel's genocide continues unabated, my capable co-host Nour Joudah is joining us for the third time, and she's becoming a regular, thankfully. Will also be introduced in just a minute. Let me just say that a couple of things about this episode. We addressed that there are more than 115,000 Palestinians that have been displaced to Egypt since October 2023. Some numbers are much higher. I will leave it to the conversation to assess some of these statistics. I am also happy to say that this is not just our ninth episode, but it also is one of the episodes where we begin to look at the context. We go a little broader before we go back into Gaza proper, and we're looking at displacement. Egypt is not necessarily the only place, but it's the principal place to which Palestinians have been displaced. Let me also say that this series is co-sponsored by the Gaza in Context, a collaborative project that brings together more than 24 institutions. You can find all the material from all of the teach-ins and the conversations, podcasts, more than 80 events so far on PalestineandContext.org, which is also on the screen. And this particular version or series, Gaza On My Mind, Gaza على بالي, is part of the broader series titled Palestine with an M. A quick word about why we're doing this series of conversations. As I have shared before, after more than 8 months or 9 months at this point of Israel's genocidal campaign in Gaza, there's this expectation that we will all go away, those people who are advocating for Palestinians and Palestinian freedom. That Gaza coverage, also the expectation goes, will be relegated to optional news. And it has been in so many ways, actually. This program is here essentially to say we are not going anywhere. We're here. We're here. The conversation about Gaza must continue. We will keep Gaza right front and center on the daily and weekly. Every week, we'll be hosting free-form engagement like this one on all things Gaza. Let me start by saying hello to my co-host Nour. كيفك Nour?
Hanging in there. How are you, Bassam?
Good. Ana, how? Sorry, say that again.
Nothing. I just said, how are you?
I'm good. I'm okay. I mean, I'm whatever, right? In these days, I mean, what can you say? But whatever is what I usually go by, and I learned it from a colleague to say whatever. طيب, a couple of words about Nour before we start. Nour Joudah is an assistant professor in the Department of Asian American Studies at UCLA. She holds a PhD in geography, and her dissertation titled Mapping Decolonized Futures, Indigenous Visitors for Hawaii and Palestine highlights the efforts by Palestinian and Native Hawaiian communities to use indigenous counter mapping as a cartographic and decolonial practice to imagine and work toward liberated futures. Nour, I will give you the floor to introduce our topic and our first guest. As I shared, Hani Almadhoun, director of UNRWA-USA, will be joining us shortly.
I think I have to give you a simpler bio for the next time. We keep going through this one. Thank you, Bassam. Yeah, I mean, I hope the points of today is that, as you said, we can kind of zoom out a little bit. Not because there's anything wrong with the level of zooming in that any of us have been doing, but the situation and the genocide obviously has had such a ripple effect throughout the region, and the displacement to Masr, to Egypt, is one such example of that. So as early as right mid-October, I think we all saw Israeli plans for ethnic cleansing, at the heart of which was removal of Palestinians from Gaza, specifically to Egypt. Those plans became glaringly evident. It was first right in sort of casual throwaway comments by Israeli officials and versions of threats, to not long after we saw maps and settlement organizations advertising housing plans by the beach. By early November, thousands of Palestinians with dual citizenship abroad were still waiting endlessly on their mostly Western governments to help advocate for their exit from the Rafah crossing. And there was also a war economy that really was beginning to brew at heightened levels at the Egyptian border, which is something, Bassam, you can certainly speak to with your work on Syria. And of course, I think one of the things that's important to remember is that these companies have been operating at the Rafah crossing in Egypt for the last decade. They did not just appear right in the last 9 months. And Meda Masr, who I think we have the link, if we can just add that for viewers, did an incredible deep dive, not only into the situation that's developed since Israel began the most recent phase of genocide of Palestinians, but also, right, how these companies, in particular Hala, was already positioned to take on this role of charging people what I essentially call a ransom, right, to escape. And so if you had previously been going to Gaza to visit family, for example, Hala was also the company that was running what were called kind of VIP services and so on. And really, the only way to not spend days potentially thrown at the border, you were paying extensive amounts, $600-700, sometimes upwards of close to $1,000 to get into Gaza and get out of Gaza, in what would be considered normal travel operations and an efficient means, right? So people potentially spending more to get in and out of Gaza than they were spending on the flights to Egypt from various countries to come visit their families. Today, after almost 9 months of genocide, there are estimated, as you mentioned, about 115,000 Palestinians in Egypt today. These are conservative estimates. I think the number is likely much higher. And so if we want to think about this in a financial lens too, at the average of about $5,000 a person, sometimes it was much higher than that in different moments, Hala and other intermediaries have raked in close to $600 million of essentially ransom money of Palestinians being displaced from Gaza. That money comes in the form of people's life savings. It comes in the form of mutual aid efforts, right, from these Palestinians and their supporters. We've all seen GoFundMe efforts by families that are desperately trying to get to safety. But also the stories I think we often hear much less are the ones about just, average Palestinians who are selling literally everything they own, either without a fundraiser or on top of a fundraiser to make it out, right? So things like their family car, a mother's wedding jewelry, whatever remaining life savings they may have. If they're lucky enough to still have a standing home in Gaza, renting it out, even if it's a little bit bombed out. And then, of course, these individuals are left arriving in Egypt, in Masr, with very little money to live on. And because all of the money that they've accumulated in the process of these, of collecting their life savings, etc., are almost entirely spent on their exit fees. And then the second population I think we want to think about today, and Huda can certainly speak to this, is there are thousands of Palestinian college students from Gaza who also found themselves stranded at the beginning of the war, immediately cut off from families that were supporting their rent or daily expenses, tuition. And there have been lots of local efforts from Egyptian NGOs as well as the Palestinian diaspora to try to fill in this gap and support these students since early December. But the needs are high, right? These are monthly needs that these thousands of students have. And donor fatigue has become a real problem. And there are no signs, even with what we all hope is a ceasefire soon, that groups are capable of filling these needs. The Egyptian government also has a lot of regulations on these NGOs as to what they're allowed to give non-Egyptian students. So they're operating with heavy regulation. So there's a lot here, I think, for all of us to dig into. Not the least of which is the fact that access to public services and sort of Egyptian loopholes or lack thereof for Palestinians. So today, as you mentioned, joining us is the lovely Huda Asfour. Huda is a firm believer in transcending boundaries, evident in her roles as a musician and an educator. Her musical journey began early in conservatories in Tunisia and in Palestine, culminating in collaborations worldwide. With 2 studio albums, Mars Back and Forth and Kouni. To her credit, Huda has also composed music for film and multimedia projects and has collaborated and featured with musicians internationally. Currently, she's delving into the art of improvisation with a keen focus on the intricate nuances of Arabic musical aesthetics and its interplay with language. In addition to her musical pursuits, Huda puts us all to shame with a bachelor's in science and a PhD in electrical engineering from George Washington University, and is a co-founder of several initiatives such as the DC Palestinian Film and Arts Festival and the Cairo and Brooklyn improv orchestras. You can explore more of her amazing work at hudaasfour.com. So welcome, Huda. Thank you for joining us. Huda also
أهلا
just came back from Masr.
أهلا وسهلا Huda. I
Thank you
also
for
want
the
to
good
welcome
news.
you and say
Thank
that
you. Thank you.
it's really wonderful to see you again. And we are very happy that you were able to join us on relatively short notice. Everything is short notice at Gaza On My Mind because it happens every week. Hello.
We're in urgent times. Yeah, and thank you for having me. And thanks for having me for having this platform for us to speak about this topic, which I think is really important and undercovered.
Huda, you came back from Egypt a while back and encountered a lot of the work that's being done to support Palestinians. Um, Maybe we can just start by you giving us from your own reflections a sense of what you didn't see and just general reactions to so much of what we have all been witnessing in regards to this, and then we can kind of dig in as we go.
Yeah, I think the situation in Egypt is multi-layered. Honestly, coming back was a bit difficult on many levels because of the realization of how difficult the situation is going to be for many, many years to come. This is not a crisis. This is not an acute crisis. This is an ongoing crisis that is just getting unfolded. And I think that's where the difficulty lies. And that's where I think most of our effort needs to start also organizing in that direction. Because not only the situation in Gaza is unlivable, those who have left, like you said, are really facing the failure of institutions on all levels, whether it's the Palestinian institution in Cairo, whether it's the institutions, even the local organizations, the limitations are immense. And as such, the challenges are really, really, really big in front of us. And one of the things I think the situation in Egypt is difficult for everyone. This is not a particularly welcoming space, for its own citizens, I would even say. And as such, with the financial crisis in Egypt, also people's capacity not only to give financially, but to just like survive on the daily is affecting also what kind of support we'll see. And I think another part of the situation is that we're not talking about the Sudan crisis, which is also um, adding to the toll and the difficulty of the situation in Egypt. Immediately, the problems are shocking because you're seeing the failure on all levels. Some of the things I didn't understand before going there is that if you're leaving on a medical leave and you have some companion, like some people that are coming out with you, first of all, you know, how people get out, who gets out is all like up in the air, and it's completely, you know, like a guessing game. And then when people get there, a lot of people are not getting the medical need, the support they need necessarily in time. Things are complicated. There's a lot of bureaucracy, and of course, the numbers are also high. But what is shocking to me was to know that some of the people who left with people who were injured or people who are sick and needed medical care have not left some of these rooms for months. And that was really terrifying for me on so many levels. So this is, and then learning about what the students' reality is, the number of kids that are without like any kind of care. We don't have like solutions for school. A year into almost like 10 months into this, the fall is coming and there's another academic year ahead of us. The solutions mostly are individual. People are trying to survive and trying to help as many individuals as they can. But what is absolutely missing right now, I think, in the Egyptian scene is much more initiatives that create collective solutions and not individual solutions or limited impact kind of solutions. And there's a lot to do that is not money related. People need people to talk to them. They need spaces to express themselves, creatively or otherwise. People need a lot of real care and mentoring. So if you have the capacity, there are beautiful initiatives that we can highlight and talk about throughout the episode that can allow you to do that if finances are not something that you're capable of giving now.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Let's maybe we can hit on some of the specific points. One
Noor,
of the things you mentioned. Yeah.
can I just
Yeah, of course.
pull up the Madam Masr article
Yeah.
right before it? Okay, so this is it. Do you want to
Hmm.
say, just for those who might have missed the introduction, do you want to say anything about, because this is a really powerful piece. So do you want
It's
to
an
introduce it
incredible
quickly?
piece. It's an incredible piece. It does a lot. I certainly wouldn't. I don't think it could summarize it completely off the top of my head. But one of the things that it does, I think, incredibly well is not only kind of break down the situation of how Palestinians are charged these quote unquote fees, these exit fees to get out, how the waiting lists are created, how folks register their families, people in Mossad register people in Gaza to get out, and how that sort of process goes. But I think what the piece does for me that is most impressive is that it shows the years and years of build up to this moment that allows Hala to position itself to do this today. And so, yeah, absolutely, I recommend to our viewers to take a look at that piece to give themselves a much more significant and deeper context as to what we're discussing logistically, anyways.
Thanks.
Yeah,
It's
of
a
course.
shocking piece, I think. It's really shocking. It was shocking for me to read all the details.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because I feel like so many of the things that we discuss at this point, we describe as shocking, and they are. But at the same time, almost everything I call shocking is also not shocking at all, because we also have known that we were heading in this direction on some level for so long. And yet, we are human, and the toll of devastation and the degree of corruption that we continue to witness still has, right, it still invokes reactions in all of us.
And we'll add it to the post on Jadaliyya, on the final post that will include the video for this event. Sorry to interrupt.
Not at all. No, it's great. Huda, I wanted to just ask you one of the things that you mentioned, particularly for a lot of our viewers who are maybe less familiar with with these processes, because there are so many various parts of the Palestinian population in Masr. If we look at the population of those who came out because of injuries, right, the wounded that have come out for treatment specifically, you mentioned the group of companions that are with them that also haven't left the hospital, and I'm hoping you can clarify for our viewers that this is obviously not something that's happening by choice, right? They're not just unwilling to kind of go into the city. And also, if you can share anything about the restrictions of folks going in to visit them, right? So Palestinian community in Egypt, also there are limitations as to their ability to kind of go into the hospitals and visit rooms of the wounded. If you know anything about that or can share, I can also add.
I mean, the policies have changed since I left, but I'll speak about what I saw or what I have experienced. For the most part, what is happening is that people are basically put into temporary hospitals, and then they get basically distributed to hospitals that have better kind of medical support for them. And this most of the time is taking a long time. Some of them have been there for months. The companion situation is that because of the fear of the legality of stay in Egypt, so the shortcut seemed to have been for them to basically prevent anyone from leaving, to make sure that no one stays in the country illegally. At least that's my understanding of the situation. And so what's happening is that the companions are in the same room most of the day, and most of them can't leave without some sort of a security or some sort of accompaniment from someone in the hospital. So that's as far as the companions go. I was able, so my aunt left Gaza a week before I had to come back to the US, and I was able to see her. So I got to visit her in one of the hospitals, which was about 2.5 hours away from Cairo by car. And that's another thing. I mean, you don't really know where people are going to be, and it takes, lots of paperwork and
There's an
talking to
assumption that everyone's in
relatives.
Cairo, and obviously that's not the case either.
Right, exactly. So people
Yeah.
get put into, hospitals, not necessarily even, it's not really clear how or what, but mostly availability, first. And the situation, the care is good for the situation, but it's really, also lacking in so many other ways. So, it's like I keep going back to the failure of the system, like completely. You see it in unfolding in Egypt. It's I think that was the theme for me on all levels. Hi, Hani.
أهلين هاني.
Hello,
Hani
people.
popped in from nowhere. I don't know how he made his way into the broadcast. No, I'm joking.
Just like Ghazan.
Ahlan wa sahlan, Hani. We were just talking about the dire situation in Egypt, and I'll leave it to Nour to do a follow up with Huda, or should we move to welcoming and asking Hani to share some of his thoughts?
Maybe a little of both. Maybe we could do a follow up with Huda, and also, Hani is certainly, like, as any of us who have family in Gaza, Hani is certainly not unfamiliar with a lot of what's been happening in Egypt as well. Huda, maybe if you have, certainly we're going to keep talking, but if you have specifically on some of the questions we've been discussing in Masr, if you have maybe some final thoughts, and Hani, just to kind of catch you up, we've been talking obviously a lot, not only about the difficulty in exiting to Egypt and the amount of sort of war economy that's developed around these exit fees and what Shirkat Hala has been doing and so on, but also the situation of Palestinian of Egyptians in Masr, and the lack of public services available to them, how many of the initiatives to help them have just been kind of attempts to spot treat issues. But of course, we have these larger structural problems, young students, obviously, who are not able to register in schools, their parents are putting them in online schools, inability of companions of the wounded to leave hospitals, because Egypt doesn't want to risk folks staying beyond their quote wounded visas, etc. So yeah, Huda, if you want to maybe share some thoughts, and then Hani, we'd love to sort of hear from you and get you involved in the conversation.
I just want to say that as far as I know, that the situation has shifted in Egypt and that people are now able to relocate and leave the hospitals, as far as I understand. So I think also the more we talk about the issues, I think part of the problem is that we don't have good representation in Egypt also. Like the corruption is so deep that no one is speaking on our behalf with government agencies also. So in that case, we have to keep talking. And I think there is a capacity for people to change things, but we really need to speak a little bit more boldly about the issues. I think there's a lot of fear in tackling some of these issues. بس يعني it's time. It's time to talk about all the issues right now.
Yeah, there's certainly no shortage of challenges. I am aware of those situations as my sister is in a hospital right now in Sohag, Egypt, and it's there. It seems she's able to move around. Sometimes maybe go a little community tour trips organized by certain community in Egypt who wants to support their Palestinian siblings. So the street has definitely been supportive. She's mentioned that some Egyptian women show up and just give him some new clothes and some treats. So that's really heartwarming to see. But I'll let Huda talk about the official situation because today I'm wearing my UNRWA-USA hat, and I like to be able to travel to see my family in Gaza. And so I agree with Huda. That's wonderful and amazing. And she's got a strong connection to Egypt and the artsy scene and the music and the engineers and all the good people. I just want to make sure kids can eat, they can get water, and UNRWA was in the best position to deliver aid to Gaza. And I hear you in Egypt. I have a lot of frustrations and a lot of, there is some misinformation as well, but it is not a pretty sight. So I'll leave it there.
Hani, before we go further, can you just share with us a little bit as we continue the conversation on Egypt? Can you share with us a little bit about UNRWA USA, and why is it that uh, well, you work there and you're the director, but why is it different from other uh, sources or foundations or institutions that provide support in Gaza? There is a note that it's the number one provider in Gaza. That's for UNRWA. If you can just share more with us. A lot of people keep asking us every time we have an event of this sort, how can they help? Where can they donate? How to distinguish between different institutions? Which sort of institutions have more of a direct connection, and potentially which institutions have a higher fixed cost, which means less of the donation reaches the people it's intended for. If you can talk to us a little bit about this before we continue the conversation, that would be great. There is the link is on the screen, unrwausa.org/Gaza, and I'll make it bigger as you share with us a bit more about UNRWA USA.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I just came back from New York City. I'm in Baltimore now, making my way to Virginia, where my family is. We went to New York to do a reception with Commissioner General Filippo Lazzarini. There is a pledging conference right now with the UN for the states to provide funding for UNRWA. And like clockwork, the moment these pledging conferences happen, more tranches of bad information is released from the Israeli side about allegations with the intention to confuse donors and make sure UNRWA doesn't have the funding it needs. I work for UNRWA USA. This is an American charity that solely exists to support the work of UNRWA financially, but also on the advocacy side. So UNRWA is the largest humanitarian actor inside Gaza. There is many great organizations out there. I've worked for a few of them. I've supported many of them. The issue with UNRWA is nobody really compares to scale. So let's talk about some of that. UNRWA has 13,000 staff in Gaza right now. The next big organization next to that probably has 200 or 200 staff, which is probably the World Food Program. So when you talk about the scale, when you talk about warehouses, a lot of them are bombed, as you all know. A fleet of cars, some of those have been also targeted, but also the connection to the community. UNRWA is not a midnight sensation. It's not a flavor of the month. Hey, Gaza needs some help. Let me go. No, UNRWA has been there for 75 years. And it's unfortunate because UNRWA exists because there is no just political solution for the Palestine refugees. The moment we have that, UNRWA is gladly happy to just go do something else, because the mandate is to protect the Palestine refugees. And a lot of that, it means right now, as we speak in Gaza, there is 1 million people who are registered to receive benefits from UNRWA. Benefits include food parcels, shelter, blankets, mattresses, in some cases, cash assistance, in case of orphans and scholars. Is it enough? No. Yani, UNRWA is not only being denied funding, but it's also being denied access to places in the north where my own family lives, where they've truly starved in December, February, and in January this year. So there is a lot of issues where the UNRWA team is not allowed to go to the north. Now I'm hearing there is more aid is being delivered to the north. This is just really happening as of yesterday. So we're trying to see if that's gonna alleviate the famine that's happening. One way a lot of people are asked is like, yes, UNRWA was delivering, aid is getting in. But again, remember some of those messaging you read, hey, Israel shut down the borders. Yes, they do, but it's also guessing. Sometimes, hey, they open another border. I'm not saying they're being very helpful. I'm not, I would be untruthful if I didn't tell you there's in many cases where the missions to deliver aid are being intentionally impeded by the Israeli forces and their military operation. UNRWA works despite that. UNRWA, the agency, lost 200 staff inside Gaza right now. And despite this, they continue to do the work. And on top of fighting these propaganda machines, on top of really advocating with Congress people to make sure the funds from the US are restored. As you're all aware, the US government defunded the agency, which is horrible because the US government is the largest donor for UNRWA. And there's a law now in the US says it cannot be funded until March of next year. Think about how cruel this is. This is a war. You know what the word is. I'm not supposed to use it. Huda's welcome to say it. The situation in Gaza, that's the right word. But where this is, we're settling for war. And now Congress is trying to make that until September of next year. So even more cruelty. And it's unfortunate because this is the largest humanitarian actor that knows the community. And get this, for those people who like to make sure this is a good value, UNRWA's cost is a third of any other UN agency, meaning if X organizations brings a food truck and UNRWA brings the food truck, it's usually the cost of a third because UNRWA hires local staff. 99% of the UNRWA staff are Palestine refugees. They're in the community. They're not amazing expats who need expenses and special education for their kids. Nothing wrong with that, but UNRWA is a very large player. And beyond Gaza, we've seen the work continues in the West Bank despite the attacks. In fact, UNRWA's headquarters in Jerusalem got burned not once but twice, and the attacks are nonstop. There is UNRWA's strong presence in Jordan. Lebanon is the silent cry. This is where, if you ask me before October 7th, where the greatest need was, I would say support the Palestine refugees in Lebanon. But even before October 7th, this is 1.1 million people were in food assistance from UNRWA even before October 7th. So let's not assume that this tragedy started then. So I'll leave it there. I just wanted people can go to UNRWA USA. Make sure you put USA, UNRWA-USA.org and make your support there. But it's not just about money. There is advocacy. You could advocate. You could sign a letter. Heck, our emails are on our website. Just send me a note of solidarity. Sometimes we feel up, sometimes we feel down, because this is personal. A lot of us feel our families are being killed and eliminated. So, and this is nonstop, you know. Yesterday it was my family, today it's my in-laws in Tal El Hawa neighborhood. I have a home in Tal El Hawa. I don't know if it still exists. I don't have the courage to ask somebody, hey, can you see my home? And while they're being targeted, killed, eliminated, and maimed. And despite this, UNRWA is still on the ground delivering aid. They burn headquarters, they burn clinics, they burn all that. And UNRWA is still delivering as much as we can. It is not an ideal situation. And you know, we need you to speak out, but also advocate, make
Yeah,
sure we have the resources to deliver aid, which sometimes is linked to a truck. Other times it's about mental health support. It's about psychosocial support. It's about sanitation, sewage, making sure the trash is picked up. Does that give you an idea,
absolutely. And
Sam?
so sorry about. I mean, we never know what to say when we are speaking with people with family in Gaza. We're very sorry, and I understand. I mean, try to understand your sentiments, especially in trying to ask for people to check on your home, which is totally normal and natural. But you, as you said, it just doesn't feel like the thing to say. Um, I have on the screen the website. Is there a place? Do you want me to direct? Is it simply just go to the link that has been on the screen,
Yeah,
UNRWA-USA.org/Gaza?
I mean, your donations to Gaza are not a black box. I want people to know this is an immediate impact. On top, within a week, your donation is going to UNRWA to buy food, to buy flour, to buy, and not for today. We're buying food from 3 months from now to make sure people have the flour. So if you want to take action, please, there's a couple of calls my colleague Lean and Layla are working on, Layla Mukhaiber and Lean Sultan, trying to get Congress not to pass a law that defunds UNRWA and other agencies as well. But we want to make sure, you know, we're being there. And this is a lot. We have not stopped, Bassam, to process our grief because we don't know who's next. You know, I'm worried for my mom. Like they killed my brother. Like you think I'm gonna worry about my house? They killed my nephews and nieces, and you know, people I love and care about. And then I'm gonna be like, hey, give your $10 here. This is beyond the dollar amount. This is historic proportion. We're going to be talking about this or writing books for generations about this situation in Gaza right now, unfortunately. And I wish it was different.
Thanks, Hani. I'll say a couple of things, by the way, that I should have said.
Bassam, your audio is cutting out.
So wanted to say a couple of
There
things
you go.
about Hani because I apologize I didn't say them when he first joined because we were in a conversation. Just a few words. There's the bios on the Jadaliyya website as well as linked on Twitter and Instagram. Hani is UNRWA-USA's Director of Philanthropy. He's born in the Emirates. Hani's family fled to Gaza Strip in the aftermath of the first Gulf War. It was tough adjusting to the harsh conditions in Gaza during the first Intifada, but his family was made whole again when his dad got a job at an UNRWA school teaching English to refugees. A child of an educator, Hani was raised with the mantra of school being the top priority. And you know, every time you talk about with someone from sort of the area, this is basically the top priority is schooling despite all the hardships. By the way, this is not in the bio. This is I'm adding on this to the bio. And in his pursuit, he eventually found his way to the United States thanks to a university scholarship from LDS Church. After earning both his master's in public administration and his BA in international studies and Latin American studies from Brigham Young University, sorry. Hani settled in Washington, D.C., where he fell into the world of fundraising for various causes that spoke to him, including civil rights and social justice groups for Muslim and Arab Americans and charities that serve the Palestinian people and other marginalized communities in the Middle East. Now, after more than a decade of fundraising, he's thrilled to bring his experience into his role at UNRWA. And the reason I'm saying all of this is because your bio is your also very important story and common story for Palestinians and for Palestinians from Gaza or elsewhere. All right, Nour, if you'd like to proceed with the conversation on Egypt, the floor is yours.
First of all, thank you, Hani, so much. And I actually wanted to ask a question, and I hope this doesn't put you on the spot too much. But one of the things that we've all seen in regards to Gaza, and I, as someone who has obviously family in Gaza, as Huda and I also do, and someone who's been watching the news, we've seen, in addition to the amazing work that UNRWA is doing, so many community efforts, right, come up. Community kitchens, folks who are just banding together as neighbors to work together, etc. And obviously, all of those kind of community efforts are also tied in to amazing on the ground NGO work that are of people that are struggling to get some things done, like UNRWA, like World Food Program or Kitchen that you sort of alluded to. Can you maybe share for us a little bit of on the ground currently? I mean, obviously you mentioned the trucks and so on, but what are maybe some examples that we can share with the audience of the kinds of things that UNRWA is currently doing in this incredibly difficult situation to work with communities as they struggle to get the resources that they need, just to give people some better sense of an example or something.
So in North Gaza, what's been consistent in the last 2 months, flour is being allowed in and some canned food, In fact, they've eaten so much canned food in the north where people go to Kamal Adwan hospital complaining and having some disease. I don't know what it is in English, but Yaraqan, some people have that or Regan because they ate too many canned bean for 9 months. So this is a real problem. Well, I learned today that the army refused to let in more flour to go to the north. So that's going to create a problem. In the south, you got more varieties where you get some fresh vegetables, you get some meat. In the north, both items are denied. In fact, pasta, the bag you buy at the store for 50 cents, now in Gaza, they pay about $3 or $4 for a bag of pasta. That's, we may have never use in our cabinet. There is a lot of shortage of supplies and things are very expensive, meaning they just talk numbers. Their mlokhia, usually the kilo, 2 pounds of mlokhia is usually 50 cents in Gaza or 40 cents. Now it's about 20 shekels, which is 10 times the price. And because people don't have it and they're not able to go harvest. Remember, the farmland is really in the edges. So you got in Beit Lahia and you got in the east side in Beit Hanun, and farmers have not been allowed to go there. In fact, a lot of them been killed. We know a couple of people personally that were picking up zucchinis and they were killed by drones. So still, this is happening, food insecurity. I have noticed last week more like canned meat is allowed in, so people are using the flour. You've mentioned the community kitchens, all that. That really the only reason those kitchens are in existence is one, the Palestinian resilience and the generosity of the donors, but also because organizations like UNRWA bring in this aid. And for example, a bag of flour comes in. What are people gonna do if they don't have stove? Remember, cooking gas is not allowed. It's not like you're gonna eat a spoon of flour. So the community kitchens pick up this food and cook it up for people. They put their resources together. One thing that I just learned about today in my way here, I spoke to my brother and he said they're not finding firewood. So North Gaza, remember, it's a plain coastal area, Mathi Khashab. So they're saying even the pallets, where they used to pack things, used to be sold for $1. Now it's $10 and they can't find it because they break it and they use it for cooking. So that's one problem where a lot of those kitchens will stop because they're not going to be able to find as much wood. And remember, my brother was telling me also cooking oil is becoming a lot more expensive because cars now, whatever few cars remaining moving in North Gaza are using the cooking oil. So it's competing with the people who use it for cooking. So some of that aid is allowed in. So remember, canned goods, some milk, that's essential. There is no eggs in North Gaza. My mom went to the hospital and they told her, go get some eggs and halib because the elderly people need the stuff and it's not there. Now I think I've seen a couple of bags come in and available, but also what's causing the disruption is these organizations are not allowed to fully access the north. Remember, like how you bring in a truck of food, but you're not allowed to distribute it, right? And then you don't have a warehouse anymore because they bombed it. And then guess what? The police cannot help you. So what's going to happen? You're creating an environment that backfires. You end up with some looting of aid that's instead going to elderly people. Can you imagine a grandma trying to go in a truck and grab a bag of flour? This is not our culture, but they're changing that. And this is not an accident. This is by design. And UNRWA was saying, hey, allow us to go, bring in the things. And so not only that the AIDS is not coming in as much as desired, but also the teams are not allowed to go and report to work. Now, organizations like the World Health Organization deliver some medicine to the hospitals, but also limited as well. So Kamal Adwan, the Indonesian hospital, the Auda hospital practically are overflowing with patients because there is a military operation near the Baptist hospital. Remember that one? Everybody freaked out when it was bombed. Now everybody was kicked out from a hospital.
Right.
So imagine you go to a local hospital and kick all the patients, and then there is no electricity.
Yeah.
If you want to run a fan for a sick patient, there's no electricity and it's very hot there. So I just hope that gives you a picture. They need your support, but a lot of people are like, oh, we're praying for you. I'm like, khalas, yani, your prayer hasn't worked, and I'm a man of faith. Do something, and I know everybody's trying, but it's
Yeah. Of
becoming overwhelming for a lot of us.
course.
You, Nour, for that, all of us, and more.
No, I appreciate that. That's exactly kind of, thank you so much for that. I think those are exactly kind of the examples and the fabric that people are maybe who are less close to the situation or are following a little less closely. Some of certain news outlets are not getting that image, not only of a question of UNRWA or other groups' supplies getting in, but also once those supplies are there, it's also these community kitchens and these Palestinians who have really banded together and the resilience that you referenced that are also putting that aid to work, and to not only distribute but to give people it in a form that they can ingest and be nourished by. And I think maybe that's also a wonderful transition to get us back to Egypt, right? Because this question that Huda brought up earlier of missing is official services, right? But then all of these sort of community efforts of folks to step in, and while that's wonderful, and we have seen that time and again, whether it's for Palestinian students in Egypt or the newly arrived. You mentioned Hani, for example, your sister. Inshallah, she's get on the mend, who's in a hospital. There's a group of Egyptian women that are coming to sort of give support, etc. But long term, right? These are the concerns of how we start to think long term about these issues, because even if Yarab, there's a ceasefire tomorrow, these 115,000 or more Palestinians in Egypt, right, are not going to just magically be able to go back to Gaza and restart their lives. So Huda, maybe you can give us some thoughts, reflections about the kinds of things that we all need to be kind of collectively thinking about in regards to Masr, but also how that ties into, right, the larger situation with Gaza, because as you and Hani have both very poignantly expressed, this is, we're in this for the long haul, and this isn't a question of, unfortunately, of just a ceasefire, though we all certainly need it to start at that point.
Yeah. Well, it's a difficult question because I don't think how do you answer that? I think for me right now it's more about reflecting about the past, learning from these lessons. And I think for me the question, maybe most people don't know that UNRWA can't actually operate in Egypt. And that's by law. And that's not about to change, I don't think, anytime soon. And as such, I think also it makes the work even harder, because you don't have any relief agencies right now that are able to provide this kind of care, and all the organizations that are being built now are very nascent entities. So we are dealing with a new movement that is also trying to take advantage of this mutual aid energy, and put it into an organizational umbrella that can actually serve more people, and that's really great. One of the questions that are very, very, like, things that I actually think about a lot right now is the idea of dependence and sustainability. How do you create models that can help people get immediate relief, but also create sustainability and new models for them to create independent lives in ways of generating their own income and their own independence in terms of finance. And I think that's something that we have to reflect on as we look at this Palestinian experience of refugees, and to as we deal with the situation in Egypt. Obviously, no one has answers right now. I mean, but maybe there's some way to find answers collectively in combining these small efforts that are happening on a micro level, to at least give a platform for people to be able to connect all these efforts. Not necessarily in an official way. I think these connections can happen organically, and they can feed into each other. So perhaps one of my wishes is that we reflect on the idea of how we share resources, and to start thinking about communal ways of capitalizing on the small resources that we have, so that we can create collective solutions that are much more impactful by sharing the small, bits of resources that we have. Maybe we can create, larger impacts in society. But it starts with actually maybe a survey. Like, we really don't understand the situation. We understand bits and pieces. It's like a puzzle. And I think perhaps one way to start is maybe a call for people who are, you know, able to help, is to, like, start thinking about a comprehensive survey that can allow us to understand the problems on a deep level, so that we can diagnose the issues and find solutions, not only to deal with the symptoms that are immediate and need relief for sure. And it's commendable that people are actually able to do this under these emotional circumstances and under this amount of injustice. To still have the capacity to do this is absolutely, like, incredible. But I also want to extend an invitation for us to start thinking about the long term, in terms of how we can pool all the small efforts into a movement that can create sustainability and solutions on the long run. I mean, one of the easiest things right now is to make sure that the people leaving are not sitting at home and not and able to process their trauma in spaces, in places with people, to talk about it, to take this energy, to capitalize on the energy. When people leave war zones, they usually have so much energy and so much anger that needs to be channeled into healthy places, so that it doesn't become a depression situation. This kind of psychological help is so important right now. So perhaps this is just an invitation for us to think a little bit outside of the scope of what has been done, um, towards what we can actually do with the kind of tools that we have in the 21st century.
I think if I may add one thing, Huda, is I wish there's a mechanism to grant some sort of refugee status for the Palestine evacuees from Gaza. There's 120,000 people who evacuated. The majority of those folks are inside Egypt now. To my understanding, and this is not, I believe UNHCR has not been authorized to register those refugees, which give them some certain level of rights. Some of them may be admitted to countries that takes refugees, and obviously some people say that that's to protect us, but also ومن الحب ما قتل يعني. We find ourselves in a situation where we get very little love, but also it's overwhelming. We help a lot of people we know in Egypt with rent and basic things for their kids, and it's a lot, and this is our duty. And the new mantra is, don't ask if somebody needs help in Gaza, just go ahead and do something for them. And I hope a lot of us do that, because people's dignity is important to them. They may starve and they wouldn't ask for food. I ran into this a lot, and we try to help as much as we can, but dignity is also important. And yes, UNRWA's mandate does not allow it to go work in Egypt solely in حتى in Iraq. Remember, Iraq and Syria, there is, UNRWA is in Syria, but not in Iraq. So there's a lot of those conversations that are larger than all of us, but there are little things that can be done to help the community.
Yeah, and I just want to really say that I mean, the things that people need, I mean, we don't only survive on food. I mean, sometimes people need a hug. It's that simple. I know it may
Community.
seem, I mean, but community, people are coming from communal spaces, from communal, societies. So the isolation, I mean, also imagine leaving Gaza to Cairo. It's terrifying, terrifying just to deal with basics. Like, how do you take the subway? How do you move from one end of Cairo to the other end? That's like a trip through Palestine sometimes, yani, for people, not only Gaza. So the level of care and the simple acts of kindness that can go a long way right now for people, I think it's really also important to talk about these things and remind people that there are a lot of simple things that you can do that can make a huge difference in someone's life.
Yeah. I mean, I think thank you both so much. I think this particular part of the conversation is so important and also so inspiring in regards to how we all need to be collectively thinking about this moment and how we move forward collectively and in community and in love and in solidarity and in so many other respects. Huda, you in particular mentioned sort of these needs and Hani too of folks and their dignity and a need for community upon being in places like Masr and so on. And we see it with things. I think of a couple of cousins who are in Egypt now. She's teaching. There are some online school options that folks, for example, in the West Bank have set up for Palestinians, not only in Gaza, but for Palestinians in Egypt, so that Palestinian parents can plug their kids into school. But what has really happened is that those online situations, despite being wonderful intention, are also incredibly exhausting. And so a lot of Palestinian parents in Egypt right now are homeschooling their kids, like in their apartments, which has also become this sort of insular, lonely process. And so how we can help them, because it's too much to put it all on them, to put the work all on them, right? How much we can help them build those networks and those communities, maybe for group homeschooling or right, being like you said, in community together. So I'll stop there. Thank you both so much, in particular for that, especially for the last exchange, which I think is incredibly important. And I'll hand it over to our esteemed Bassam to close us out.
Esteemed. I actually took my image off because you guys were having this conversation, and I felt sort of, I'm not Palestinian. I felt a little bit that I'm encroaching, and it was a wonderful conversation. Thank you all for being here and doing this. Thanks to my capable co-host Nour, who jumped into Gaza on my mind and was like organic from the get-go. I know that Hani might have to leave, and I know that we promised about an hour, so we are hitting an hour. So I'll leave you with your choice of sharing last words, starting with Hani and then Huda, and we will close thereafter. Hani, do you have any last words? Anything you'd like to share? Your personal story, experience, your family being in Gaza, and growing up there, and then now being here with us. For us is so precious. So thank you for joining. Feel free to leave us with any last words you'd like to share.
I mean, thank you for the opportunity. Really, this has been so helpful for me personally. It feels like almost a therapy session to talk to people who understand, and we're and it's been a lot. I've always struggled with my emotions, just as a Palestinian, and I think that's always been a curse. But in this war, this has been a credit, because how would you function if you're not able to deal with this emotionally? And I know that maybe I don't know how long I'm gonna live, but this war shaved a few years from our own lives, and caused a lot of strain and stress. But it's really never about us. We're here safe. We're trying to advocate for our families, and we have so many heroes. Here the West is obsessed about the term heroes. Like, you have somebody running a soup kitchen, and then everybody calls him a hero, but they don't think like that. They think from a duty and obligation and answering the call. But you really think about this, and then a lot of these comments are like, these are my heroes, but they never, like, they don't think about it this way, where, like, it's not a bad word, but it's just our life is about our community, about doing the right thing for your neighbors. And it's risky. You've seen people who run soup kitchens get targeted and killed. So, whenever we do anything, you could be in your home and you could get killed. So ultimately, my last ask is to let people know, they should support UNRWA-USA.org. Talk to us. We're real humans. Send a message of support. We have an amazing team that care about this. And I don't think I've taken a day off since October 7th. And that's not because, I like to work, but because the situation is overwhelming. I know all of you, but it is also important to acknowledge, and Hoda will remind us, you cannot pour from an empty cup, right? Sometimes we need to just reset, leave some space. And we haven't had this privilege. A ceasefire hasn't happened. We've failed in that. And next week, we have some certain foreign dignitary coming to Washington, D.C., and, we hear a lot of things happening in town. I pray for the safety of my family. All Gaza is my family. Kul Palestine. I cry when I see kids in Tul Karim get killed in Jenin. But at the end of the day, I want to really continue to do this work to the best of my ability. And we're only successful because we attract people like you and supporters who care about this. So thank you, and I'm gonna sign off now. With that,
Shukran, Hani. And I don't know what to say. I think the word we were looking for earlier is genocide. I'll say it because I can. And
على راسي.
shukran,
السلام عليكم.
Habibi. Salam. Huda, any last words? We should have asked you to bring your oud because you're a remarkable oud player to sort of close us out. But any last vocal words?
Wallahi, just maybe like a reminder for people to really focus on what Hani said about the cup being full. I know it's hard, but I think it's gonna be a long marathon, and this is unfortunately, as hard as this sounds, it's only the beginning. So we really have to be prepped for it. So I hope that people use their privilege to get stronger. What's happening in Gaza is a reminder that we are living in fascist times globally. And I think that we have an opportunity to tip the scale. Actually, it may take much more effort than we thought, but it looks like also liberating Palestine might happen through liberating the rest of the world first. So I don't know. It's gonna be an interesting. It's an interesting situation we're dealing with, and I really hope that we can keep working on our power as a community to keep empowering each other and find solutions as we face the failure.
Shukran, Huda. Noor, anything you'd like to share? We know that we do know
I
that we will be back next week, and we will be talking about many other topics. We'd love to have you, Huda, back again. We'd love to have Hani as well back again. I don't know if we've hosted anybody that we don't love to bring back, which is why we brought them in the first place. عندك شيء انت نور? I know you're
I think Huda and Hani ended us off perfectly.
that's wonderful. I agree. Shukran to everybody, and thank you all for joining us. Please feel free to visit palestiniancontext.org. to watch all the videos slash teachings podcasts that we have. So many of them, if you're an educator, are sort of curated for educators, including what I keep saying is the teaching module that will be up by the end of July, which includes segments and clips from all the videos, because there are hundreds of hours. So we're curating them in ways that are more digestible for the classroom, if you're interested in that, or for sharing, learning, and so on. If you don't want to watch an entire episode or teaching, sometimes it's 2 hours. There are kind of like cliff notes to cheat. There's no shortcut, but there is a lot of people who would like to learn more, and they just have, for instance, a couple of hours, so you can actually get a lot done there by picking and choosing. All right, we'll see you next week. We don't know who we never know who we're gonna host next week, or what the topic will be. But I know that we will be here, and please stay safe. And yeah, we're not going anywhere. For those who think we're gonna go anywhere, and for those who think that the fall semester will be, back to normal, right? The problematic normal. It will not. طيب, salam.